Looks like everyone is in from the waiting room, so we will go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, to our September Missouri Open Door series. Today, we're going to be talking about switch adapting. My name is Angelina Alpert. I am from the University of Missouri Kansas City Institute for Human Development, and we will go ahead and get started today with our objectives. We are going to do an overview of Missouri No Wrong Door. We're going to talk a little bit about social and spirituality, and then we're going to learn about switch adapting. For those of you unfamiliar with No Wrong Door, it is aimed to transform the way people access services in the community. So it supports individuals and caregivers to make decisions on complete and accurate information about their options for anyone seeking long-term services and supports, regardless of age, income, or disability. We do these Missouri Open Door series in partnership with Missouri Assistive Technology, as well as a bunch of other partners through No Wrong Door. Today we do have a special guest for our presentation. Alana is joining us today, so I'll hand it over to her a little bit later. A little bit more about the series. Our goal with these is to open doors to integrated supports. So this is our integrated support star, which aims to integrate services and supports into everybody's lives. So we have 5 different types of services and supports, which are going to be personal strengths and assets, relationships, eligibility specific, which we talk about in the benefit series, community-based, and technology, which we talk about in this series. As I mentioned with the integrated services and supports, occasionally a person using services and supports can unintentionally be secluded from the family and the community that they want to be a part of when using only eligibility specific services. So our goal is that everyone is using lots of different types of services and supports and integrating them throughout their life so that they're able to be a part of the family and community of their choosing. So, a little bit about our social and spirituality domain. Start with charting the life course. So, charting the life course is a framework and set of tools to help you think differently about your vision of a good life, setting high expectations, and integrating multiple types of supports. It helps to organize your ideas, visions, and goals, as well as problem solve, navigate, and advocate for supports. On the bottom of our screen there, we have some of our icons that we use, and to our far right is our 6 domains. So just different areas of life, one of which is social and spirituality. So this is from our taxonomy, but just a little bit about social and spirituality. It includes having friendships, social and personal relationships, leisure and recreational activities, exploring faith or spiritual aspects of life. And then it's broken down into subdomains and topics. On our Life Course Tools website, we have starter stars for each of our domains. So this here is a social and spirituality support option star. So when thinking about somebody's social and spirituality and the different types of supports and services that are available, personal strengths and assets could be hobbies and interests and the needed supplies for them, having the money and budget for social activities. Relationships could be friendships or relationships. Eligibility supports could be social groups, Tech Act programs to help fund some of the adapted things you might need for social and spirituality. Alana is going to talk today about switch adapting toys. Community resources would be things such as parks and recreation, and playgrounds, community centers, and then technology could be things like social media, online games. And with that, I will pass it over to Alana for her to share about switch adapting.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see here. All right. Angelina, can you hear me and see my slides?
Yes,
Awesome. Hi, everyone. And Angelina, remind me when my stop time is.
we go until 1:30.
Great. To me, that's 2:30, but yes. Hi, everyone. I'm joining you from Philadelphia to talk about switch adapting. And I am joining you from Tech Owl, which stands for Technology for Our Whole Lives. And we are based at the Institute on Disabilities at Temple University. Our logo is a little owl. The mascot of Temple University is an owl. Quick access check. You'll notice I tend to describe the images on my slides if they're important. I want to make sure everyone is getting all the information necessary, regardless of whether they can see my slides or not. Looks like we have captions on, so we're good to go there. But if you need any help with that, let us know. Feel free to, be yourself and, do what you need to do during this to experience the information and for it to be as accessible as possible. And if you need anything else to make this information more accessible to you, please let me know. So if you need me to repeat something or say something a different way, or if you need the slides later, I don't know if we'll share out slides, but I think probably we can. So anything I can do to make the experience more accessible, please let me know. This workshop today is designed to help you do three basic things. Number one, learn about switch access. Number two, potentially switch adapt toys yourself. And number three, and perhaps most importantly, connect with resources in the future. Quick note about me, my name is Alana Raffel. I'm an occupational therapist and assistive technology specialist at Tech Owl, which is the State Assistive Technology Act program for Pennsylvania. I do many things in my role here, including managing our public community space and 3D printing, which I'm doing in this photo. Quick note about Tech Owl. Many of you may be familiar with Missouri's State Assistive Technology Act program or others if you're joining from elsewhere. Tech Owl, as I said, stands for Technology for Our Whole Lives. We serve everyone across the lifespan. If you are not from Pennsylvania or Missouri, or if you just don't know where your state ATACT program is, you can find your state ATACT program at at3center.net/state program. And that will give you a list of every state's program, including all the territories. This photo here is of someone in our community space trialing a refreshable Braille display. A little bit more about Tech Owl. We are a federal and state funded nonprofit organization. So even though we're based at Temple University in Philadelphia, we serve the whole state and we're not just focused on Temple University. We serve everyone in Pennsylvania. We view disability through social and holistic models. So we're really focused on increasing accessibility in the built environment or using assistive technology to help people live life to the fullest. We really believe in a user-centered experience. So we try to educate people, inform and empower them to know about assistive technology. But ultimately, we want people to make their own decisions about what works best for them and their lives. This photo is of someone using the Rendeavor VR system, a virtual reality system that can be connected to software. And that's an example of something we have in our lending library that people can try out. There are four core services of all the State Assistive Technology Act programs that I wanted to mention. The first is device demonstrations. So, meeting one-on-one with a family or a clinician and their client to go through different options of assistive tech devices, compare and contrast. Every state program has some version of an equipment loan program. So in Pennsylvania, we mostly do this via UPS. We're shipping things back and forth across the state. We do some on-site pickups of mobility equipment, but mostly we're just shipping stuff back and forth. Every state does this a little bit differently. Same for equipment donation. In Pennsylvania, we have 12 sites that do used equipment exchange. So people can stop by and drop stuff off and pick stuff up at these 12 sites, including here at our community space in Philadelphia. And then finally, all state ATAC programs do presentations, trainings, technical assistance, where we educate people about all kinds of topics related to assistive technology, including things like switch adapting. All right, so let's get into it. Let's talk about switch access. I'd love to, for a moment here, just kind of get a sense of who's in the room. So if you don't mind just popping something in the chat about your experience with switch access. Have you made your own switches? Have you switch adapted your own toys? Have you never seen a switch in your life? Have you, where are you in the world of switch access? Are you curious but have never experienced it, or maybe you're an expert. So if you don't mind taking a moment, that's helpful for me to just get a sense of like where everyone is. So someone saw a switch adapted toy but haven't seen it done. Just give another moment, see if we can get a couple other responses. Currently switch adapting toys with a colleague. Cool. Seen some, not sure. Not sure is a good answer. Yeah, just here to learn. Cool. This is new to me. Have seen people, bubble machine. Cool. Awesome. Familiar. Cool. Oh, that's great. The daughters OT did classes for parents. Love that. New to me. Awesome. It sounds like we have a perfect group in this room for this conversation. Oh, hey, Jess. Jess makes switches and switch adapted toys. Pre-made, familiar. Awesome. This is great. So for those of you who are new to the world of switch access, I'll just take a quick moment to share about kind of the concept of switches. Switches offer an alternative way to control a toy or an appliance. So I feel like the word switch is like a difficult word because sometimes when I say it, people are thinking of a Nintendo Switch, which like we also have a Nintendo Switch here with like an adaptive gaming setup. So that's tricky. I'm not talking about a Nintendo Switch. I'm not necessarily talking about a light switch, though the concept is similar. That it basically makes something do something, and often in a way that is more accessible for someone with a physical disability. So perhaps the switch makes it easier to press. Perhaps it makes the surface area bigger. So in the case of video games, we have kind of a switch adapted video game setup. I think I have a slide of it later. It makes it so that we can customize the position of all the buttons. For someone who can't hold a traditional Xbox controller, we can set it up so we have a switch button for the X, a switch button for Y, A, and B, and put them in places that that person can access. Maybe it's their head and they're moving their head back and forth, or their elbows, or wherever they can access. And so typically a switch allows us to interact with something in a way that's more accessible for someone who doesn't have perhaps full range of motion and fine motor control. The most common type of switch that many of you probably have seen if you've worked in a school or outpatient, or out in the world of disability, you might be familiar with the button switch style, which might be known as a jelly bean, a gumball switch, or a buddy button, depending on the brand. There's some pictures here of switch adapted, like moving little animal toys. They're very versatile. They're pretty durable. They can be positioned in all different places to be hit with whatever kind of controllable, consistent, reliable movement that a person has. And they come in all different colors, and they're usually round. But we have other kinds of pressure switches as well. So buttons that require you to press a button use pressure. Some of them are things like a wobble switch in the top right here. It's basically like a little stick or antenna, and all you need to do is like smack it. It's just you gotta get close enough to hit it, but it doesn't have to be very fine movement. You just gotta hit it from the side at some direction to activate this switch. We also on the left here have a Bluetooth switch. So this connects via Bluetooth. It has two switches. So maybe one switch is allowing you to scan, like picture a Spotify playlist. The button on the left is allowing me to scan, go down the list, and the other button allows me to select, and I don't need to plug it in with a wire. It connects via Bluetooth. And then we have a micro light switch, which requires just a very light pressure. So we're able to gauge, some switches need more pressure to activate and some need less, like a micro light switch. We also have switches that can be used via the mouth, like sip and puff switches or a bite switch. So the quad stick here in the center, that black device, is used by someone with a spinal cord injury, perhaps, and they're using their mouth to make their wheelchair move, to play video games through a series of actions like sipping and puffing at different velocities. I don't know if that's the right word, but a hard switch and a hard puff versus a soft one or a long puff. So we can interact with things using just our mouth, and same with this bite switch. This is the Glass House is the device here. It's a head tracking mouse that you can wear like glasses and move your head around the screen and the mouse will follow. But how do you click, right? So we can use our head to do head tracking, but in order to click to select something, that person would have to but use this. You can use this with a pressure switch. You can use this with like all different kinds of switches. But if you're really only able to move your head, you might use a bite switch. So you bite down to activate. So these are also kinds of switches. There's also movement activated switches. So maybe what the action that we can do is an eye blink, and the person on the left here is just has to do a very intentional blink of the eye to activate this switch. So where a typical blink doesn't activate it, but this very intentional blink does, and perhaps that is how they're activating their switch. Same with the head tilt switch. The person is wearing a headband around their head and they tilt their head. And then we have devices like proximity switches, which don't require physical touch, but only require motion sense. So if you swipe your hand over the proximity switch or near the proximity switch, it will activate. So these devices all detect movement of some kind and they don't require pressure, which some people aren't able to provide when interacting with something. There's also some new and upcoming technology in the world of switch access. They detect signals from your muscles or your brain, things like the NeuroNode, which uses EMG or EEG. So all of these, this is like a whole world beyond me. It's like very exciting and cool and complicated. And I'm looking forward to learning more about it because it feels like a whole other world. All right, so we talked a little bit about all the different kinds of switches that exist. And I want to share a little bit about building switch skills. And first, I'll mention that, while many kind of switch toys end up looking sort of pediatric, because so many of these like simple on and off toys are switch adaptable, I want to mention that there are switch activities available for all ages and interests. So in the back on this slide, the picture is the Xbox adaptive controller. So it has two large black buttons. And then what you can't see here is it has a series of inputs in the back where I can plug in a bunch of different switches. So I can plug in, it has like a little input for X, Y, A, B, left trigger, right trigger. And I can plug in a bunch of switches to all those different inputs and then allow a person to use those switches to play the game. So I usually, depending on the game, if we're playing like Mario Kart or Brawlhalla or whatever, we plug in different switches depending on, the actions of the game and what the person is able to interact with. There are also devices like the Arcana Strum, which is this kind of guitar looking device on the top, where we can put, the person isn't using switches in this picture, but we can plug switches into this guitar device and allow someone to play this guitar device with a series of switches. This penguin guy in the middle has two switch ports where we can plug in two switches and do two different things. We can switch adapt for remote controlled cars, things like this spinning galaxy light thing. There are lots of ways to use switches and learn about switches beyond just kind of bubble machines, though bubble machines are fun and I love a bubble machine. Why is switch access important? I mean, switch access can give people access to the world, and it's especially important to give children access to switch adapted toys and switch adapted devices because we're identifying the functional tools that this person can use throughout their life. So by using switch adapted toys, we can start to learn about what switches work. So is it going to be the jelly bean switch or the wobble switch? What kind of switches work for that person and what positions are the most accurate and effective? Because we want to be building their sense of timing, their accuracy, so that maybe right now we're just turning on a light up wand like in this picture, but eventually we could be using it to have a person feed themselves or interact with a computer or all different kinds of devices. And switch adapted toys really support a child's sense of agency. So for a child who can't control much of the world around them, to be able to turn something on and off, to be able to interact with a toy can be a very powerful sense of autonomy, especially if you have multiple switch adapted toys, which, I can talk a little bit about how to make that happen. We can be making selections and choosing and interacting with the thing that I want to interact with. So it can be a really powerful tool in the world of advocacy and accessibility. And as I mentioned, we can use switches to expand independence and interdependence. So switch adapted toys are a great place to start, but we can also use switches to navigate your computer or your communication device. I think someone mentioned something about communication in the chat earlier. We can use switches to operate environmental controls like smart home technology, and we can control specialized technology like the OB dining robot, which uses 2 switches. So this OB dining robot, which we have in our lending library at TechL, I'm not sure if you have one in Missouri, but you might. This device has 2 switches. One switch allows you to select which bowl you want to scoop, and the other switch makes the spoon scoop and bring it to your mouth. So understanding, what kind of switches work, where should we put them, and building that sense of accuracy, timing, all of that stuff would allow someone to potentially eat independently using a device like the OB dining robot. All right, so we talked about switch access and all the different types. And now I want to share about some basics of adapting toys. And I'll just say this is a kind of a brief overview. We could really dig deep into it and spend a lot of time. I'm still learning about adapting certain kinds of toys, but I hope that this gives you a starting place. If you don't, haven't jumped into this yet, I hope it's a starting place for you that you can engage more with in the future. So first, I want to share this kind of complicated, but overall fairly understandable flow chart about ways to add a switch, because you can't just switch adapt any device or any toy the exact same way. So the first question we have to ask is, what's the power source? If the power source is that it plugs into a wall, like for example, a blender. I don't know if anyone's ever done switch adapting a blender, and everyone can help make a smoothie. If it plugs into the wall outlet, like a blender, we have to use a PowerLink control system or a smart plug device. There's a picture of a PowerLink here, and this would allow us to switch adapt something like a blender that plugs into the wall. That is not what we're going to be talking about today. So power source, but plugs into a wall outlet, we're not dealing with that. That's maybe another session. If the power source is that it's battery operated, we have 2 more questions. So we have a battery operated toy in front of us. The question is, does it have internal buttons or remote control, like the remote control car that I showed? Or there's a picture here of a little birthday bear with he's like a plush bear with wires coming out of his foot. So if it has internal buttons where you have to push the foot to make it do something, or a remote control car, then this will requiring some soldering and some wire work, and it gets a little bit more complicated. Still doable. If I can do it, you can do it. But again, that's not what I'm going to be showing you today. So our last kind of flow here, if it's battery operated and the only function is that it turns on and off. So if that's the case, if we have, and I'll show you some photos and videos in a second, a toy that uses batteries, so it's not rechargeable, it has batteries, and it basically just turns on and off, then we can use a battery interrupter, which is, in my opinion, the simplest way to adapt a toy if you're new to this work, and a great place to start. So we do have on our YouTube channel a quick video about battery interrupters that you're welcome to take a look at. It's like a quick tutorial about how to make a battery interrupter. So I won't show that now, but I just wanted to share that resource, and I'll make sure to share that out afterwards. So I just wanted to show you a couple videos of what a switch adapted toy looks like. So this video is of something pressing a switch and turning on a light wand. Okay, you could hear me in the background there. But yeah, so let me show it one more time without sound maybe. All right, so pressing the button, it's connected to the battery interrupter, it turns on the light wand. And here's another one. Another kind of, these are both 3D printed switches, by the way, which you could use either a 3D printed switch or a commercial switch in this case. This is a video of a spinning Elsa doll that activates when you press the switch. So both of these are toys that take batteries and basically just turn on and off and do one thing. That's the easiest thing to switch adapt. So of course you can buy a commercial battery interrupter online. They're about $25. When you buy one at a time on Amazon, you can buy them in bulk sometimes. But I also encourage folks to learn the easy task of DIYing a battery interrupter, which basically requires a wire, 2 pieces of copper tape, and a small piece of cardstock. So you can see here, these are kind of the ingredients. We need the input side of the jack, which will go into the toy. These step-by-step instructions, I have a PDF of, and Angelina, I'm happy to share that out with you after. This is once you do it once, you're a pro. This is what a toy looks like when you're installing the battery interrupter. So basically, the toy is, it is as it is. It has its batteries in it, and you are slipping the battery interrupter between the batteries and the battery compartment to stop the circuit from completing. So theoretically, once we have, let me see if I can, I'm gonna grab a toy. Hang on one second. All right. So, you saw it on the screen a little bit, but here's what a toy looks like when it has a battery interrupter stuck into its battery compartment. Nothing's happening when I turn it on and off. Nothing happens when I turn it on and off because this battery interrupter is stopping the circuit from being completed with the battery, and now it won't do anything because it's being interrupted. But when I plug in our switch and make sure that our toy is on, then I can use the switch to activate it. And this has a long wire. I could set this up on someone's wheelchair or wherever they can activate it. So the battery interrupter is really just this small piece. You can see in the left photo here, it's a small piece with 2 wires with copper tape on each side, and the switch allows the circuit to complete. Here's a little bit what it looks like to put a battery interrupter into your toy. So it's a little bit annoying sometimes, especially with this particular wand. It's like you really gotta get it in there. But this is something like you could do tomorrow. You can order this $10 toy on Amazon, you open it up, you put your battery interrupter in, and now it's good to go. I obviously tend to, we 3D print a lot of switches, but if you have a commercial switch, that will work with whatever toy you want to put your battery interrupter in. And often so many of these things are sold separately. So often you can buy a switch adapted toy online, whether it's from like a disability specific website or Amazon. You can buy a toy, that has been switch adapted like this. They're usually pretty expensive. Like this toy, I think is $10. The materials for this battery interrupter are about $3. So altogether, this is like $13 versus buying something like this that has been switch adapted with this one wire might be like $50. Expensive. So learning how to switch it up yourself is really helpful. And then if you have a switch from a company, it might be $50 to $75. These things add up. So I like to 3D print switches when I can, but at least if you're, buying for your school or you're buying the switches, maybe at least you don't have to pay for the switch adapting process, which you can do on your own. So there are some toys that, as I said, will work with your battery interrupters, and there are some toys that will not. So as I mentioned, if you're using a battery interrupter like this, you cannot use toys like plushies with buttons in their paws. You can't use remote control cars. Those toys, and they can be switch adapted, but they require internal modification. So for example, for the plushies, you have to open up, like I take a seam ripper and open up their little foot, and I have to snip the wires and connect it together. So that does not work for our battery interrupter. And we can't use USB rechargeable toys as well. It has to be kind of standard AA or AAA batteries. The picture here is a little like penguin race that can be battery interrupted and used as a toy. There are some other toys that work well. Things like bubble machines, I think someone mentioned, the LED wand. So this wand in the front is a toy that we switch adapt a lot. That looping penguin race or other track toys like in this picture. We tend to also do a lot of toys like moving animals and different dinosaurs that just turn on and off. Like once they're on, they're going. vehicles. You can see in this photo, like a fire truck. And then one toy that we've started to do a lot is spin art, which obviously we're not switch adapting the like squeezing the paint on process, or though we can find other ways to adapt that. But we're able to switch adapt the process of spinning the spin art. So maybe someone is squeezing the paint on it, and another person is pressing the button to make it spin. I want to mention that at least in Pennsylvania, and I imagine in many state ATAC programs, including Missouri, you can borrow switch adapted toys to try them out before you might want to purchase them or make something yourself. So in Pennsylvania, you can borrow things like the bubble machine, the Prisma light, the remote control car, a super soaker, the Linkimals, dancing penguin and sloth. And so these are all examples of, things that are already switch adapted. You don't have to switch adapt it. And in our lending library, you have to borrow a switch separately. So if you wanted to try out the Prisma switch adapted Prisma light, you say, I want to borrow the Prisma light and a switch. Or if you already have a switch and you just want to borrow the toy, that's fine too. So this is what it looks, some of the things look like in our lending library. I'd be curious to see in Missouri what you all have as options in your lending library. Maybe if someone in the chat actually can tell me how your lending library works. Like, is it via UPS, or how do you pick stuff up? I'm curious if anyone in the chat has utilized that service and what that looks like. And perhaps you've even borrowed a switch adapted toy from the lending library. So again, in Pennsylvania, our lending library happens online, but you can find your state lending library at at3center.net. I want to mention some other resources that we have. Santa's Little Hackers is a program that happens during the holidays. Like us in Pennsylvania, we have a switch adapted toy drive during the holidays. So that's why we 3D print so many switches, and we get volunteers together to build them. We get donations of battery operated toys like this unicorn light, which is from Amazon. We have an Amazon wish list where we take requests for donations of toys, and then we can put these together, give them out during the holidays. We usually try to give out about 100 toys during the holidays. But that's mostly in Pennsylvania. And actually this year, we're really focusing on just the Philadelphia region. But there are lots of other resources to getting access to at least 3D printed switches and switch adapted toys. So Santa's Little Hackers is a national organization, I believe, that has a similar program that provides kids with switch adapted toys. And there are some local chapters of different organizations that also do that. Organizations like Makers Making Change and Tikkun Olam Makers, TOM. And these are both organizations that have typically groups of students. So these groups are usually at universities, and they get together and they do different projects related to assistive technology fabrication. And one of the things that they often do is a switch adapted toy drive. So I know, for example, the Tikkun Olam Makers chapter in Pittsburgh tends to do a switch adapted toy drive during the holidays. And I'd be curious if you have, maybe someone knows, and you can tell us in the chat about access to groups like Makers Making Change or Tikkun Olam Makers, or maybe even Scout might be the right person to connect with about that, since I know Scout is involved in 3D printing at the Missouri ATAC program. So, and it looks like David in the chat said that the lending library in Missouri has a number of switch adapted toys plus switches. Awesome. So it looks like there are some great options there. I'd be curious to see which toys you all have and which we have, and maybe we need to freshen up our toy library as well. I wanted to also mention that Makers Making Change, an organization that does a lot of work on 3D printing, has a GitHub dedicated to switch adapting. So, they have resources about how to switch adapt things like the remote control cars and the plushies. So that's a place that if you want to kind of go beyond this basic step of putting a battery interrupter in a battery compartment for this kind of on and off toy, that is a great, they have resources for this kind of stuff as well. But that is a great resource for going beyond switch adapting with battery interrupters and, being able to switch adapt all kinds of different toys and devices. And they also have links to the files to 3D print the switches. This is one I just started printing recently. It has a domed cap rather than a flat cap like our older version, which I really like. So they have a lot of different styles of switches that you can print with different uh, like little images on the top, a little smiley face, tactile designs as well. So if you're interested in 3D printing or involved with 3D printing in some way, you can access the files through Makers Making Change as well as instructions. And then I think Jess put in the chat actually the link to switchtoys.org, which is another great resource for another kind of 3D printed switch and other information about switches. And David in the chat said, Missouri Assistive Technology has done a holiday switch adapted toy drive for several years. Awesome. We've worked in conjunction with a local school district to do this. Fantastic. So it sounds like there are some local resources as well for folks to potentially get involved or get access to switch adapted toys that way. Thanks, David. All right. So I think we're going to wrap up a little early, Angelina, if that's okay. And I'm happy to answer lots of questions about switches and switch toys. And I could even show you some other stuff that I have around here. But I wanted to mention before I get to questions that you can connect with us and learn more about switches and switch toys and accessibility and assistive tech. Our website is techowlpa.org. You can email us at techowl@temple.edu. And I encourage folks to follow us on social media, which is where I'm sharing a lot of ideas for all kinds of things related to assistive technology. So our handle is TechOwlPA, and you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn. And I'd love to have you follow along and, you know, check out what we're doing there. And I'm going to, awesome, Brandon. As I start to potentially answer some questions, I'm going to put this survey up on the screen. I'm actually going to, let's see if this works, if I can put the link in the chat. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't, when I type it in for some reason, it doesn't like become a hyperlink. So I'll try to do that in a moment. Or maybe Angelina, if you can pull that link up and then pop the link in the chat to make it hyperlinked. Does that make sense?
Sometimes it's weird as to whether it decides to hyperlink them or not.
For some reason,
it might just be Zoom, but I will try.
Usually if I go to the bit.ly link and then copy and paste that link back into the chat, it'll work. Anyway, which is hard to do when I'm screen sharing, but
there we go.
Oh, thanks. So yeah, you should be able to use the link or the QR code. The presentation title is Switch Toys. My name is Alana. And as you are doing that, feel free to do that now, or if you would prefer to do it later, that's okay too. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about switch adapting, toys, assistive tech, Tech Owl, all of those kinds of things. Brandon in the chat said it looks like if there are any links to get involved 3D printing wise, please share. It's my hobby and I love it. Yeah, I mean, Brandon, definitely if you haven't already, I would recommend connecting with Makers Making Change, which has a great kind of like list of assistive tech 3D printing files, as well as a forum and different design, requests that people are putting out. I'm also I'm going to stop sharing for a second so I can pull up a link to our assistive technology Discord, which is pretty focused on 3D printing in case anyone wants to check that out. It's a community online. I know it's like another platform that not everyone wants to like do another platform, which I understand. But if you're comfortable with Discord already, or if you want to try out a new platform, this assistive tech Discord might be an interesting place to get involved with some other folks doing 3D printing, or just kind of scroll through it and find some other resources. I'm just going to pull up the link for that. All right. So yeah, that link should take you to the assistive tech Discord. It's all about all kinds of assistive technology. So anyone who's interested in assistive tech can join us there, but especially focus on 3D printing and fabrication. Oh, and I just heard a buzz, which I think means someone has joined, which is cool. I'm going to just share this slide one more time so you have access to the QR code if you need it or information. And what other questions do you have? Are there any questions about what can be switch adapted maybe, or any questions about any of this stuff?
You could either toss questions in the chat, or if you want to ask them verbally, if you raise your hand, I can go ahead and get you unmuted.
Maybe I was very thorough. I'll put my email in the chat in case anyone wants to touch base with me directly. Happy to, send if there's some link or something I didn't get to send, happy to do that. But yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out. We can give it a couple more minutes, Angelina, and see if other folks have questions though. And then I know you had more slides to share.
Just a few more at the end.
I'm curious if you, in the chat, maybe if someone could give me a sense of like, are you feeling like this is doable? Are you feeling like it's intimidating? Does it seem fun? Like, where are you at now compared to where you were in the beginning? Are you like, I'm going to try this or not so much? Or what other information might you need to feel empowered to connect with Switch Adapting? I'd love to hear what you think now. Awesome, Lori. Yeah, I'm curious how what you'll try next. Is there other classes on more advanced adapting? Yeah, I don't know about classes. I mean, we sometimes host workshops at TechEl here in Philadelphia. And there may, I don't know if Scout in Missouri has hosted similar things, but Austin, I don't know if you're even in Missouri, but yeah, I wonder if there's also some virtual opportunities through other organizations. Yeah, how-to videos or workshops for sure. I think that website switched. I'll go back to that. Switchtoys.org, I believe, has some tutorials and videos on YouTube as well. I've done a couple, but I always feel like it's pretty hard to I don't have quite the fancy enough equipment to really show what I'm doing. I feel like I need a better setup to record. Actually, we did a workshop here, Switch Adapting water guns for a summer camp, and someone did record themselves doing it. And let me see if I can. Well, maybe Angelina, while you share your slides, I'm going to see if I can find that video of Switch Adapting the water guns as an
And David,
example.
I know you are on. I don't know if if Scout does anything, or
Mhm.
if David, that might be something Scout wants to start after this. But I will go ahead and toss up just the last couple of slides here. Just our schedule for the rest of the year. We are getting close to our final few here. Benefit series for the rest of the year. Again, those are the second Wednesday of every month. October is going to be new for 2026 Medicare open enrollment, and November 12th will be the master plan on aging. And then for the tech series for the rest of the year, we have October as gift giving for loved ones with disabilities, and November is moved up a bit for the holidays, and that's going to be on caregiving for memory loss. And then our website, lifecoursetools.com. If you wanted to see any more of the Charting the Life Course stuff, you can also find the domain starter stars on there. And if nobody else has any questions, then I think that's it for us today. Thank you, Alana, and thank you all for being here. And we hope to see you on the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.